Welcome to the Knowledge for Men show. Your life will never be the same.
Your level of success will seldom exceed your level of personal development.
I want to die empty of regret. I want to die empty of my best work. We don't understand who we are. Instead, we're living out somebody else's narrative.
What one man can do, another man can do. If it's been done, it can be done again.
Being yourself and being your truest, most authentic self in every moment. If it scares you or makes you a little afraid, do it. Follow your heart and your gut.
The first stage, I think, is finding you, like finding out who I am today.
Stuff will not work. You will have things that fail. Success is when you're a happy, fulfilled person. How do you define success?
It's your life, and you are the creator of the movie script that is your life story.
Hey, my team and I are offering a 3-day intensive retreat in San Diego, California. This retreat is going to be so powerful and transformative. My team and I will show you how to discover yourself, your true potential, and help you find your path and purpose in life and uncover the warrior's courage that is within you. I literally put my heart and soul into this program, and the reason why you want this is because I will save you time and money from having to figure out all of this on your own. There are only 10 spots available for the retreat, so go to kfmretreat.com to learn more and apply for the program. Again, that's kfmretreat.com. All right, guys, welcome to the show. I'm here with Jim Wolfe, upcoming book coming out of his Level Up, Your Guide to Authentic Confidence and Internal Bliss. I'm excited to have him here on the show. Jim, how you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing great, Andrew. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. I'm happy to have you here on the show. We're going to jumpstart into the episode with a favorite success quote of yours or some sort of saying that you've lived by, and explain to the audience like what this really means to you.
Excellent. So my quote comes from a long time ago, and it goes like this. Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I'm changing myself. And that's from the poet Rumi. I really love that quote. I actually have it written on an index card and hung up in my bathroom so I can see it every day, because it's kind of been the theme of my life for the past 5 years. In the past, I kind of railed against the reality of the world, and I really wanted to change all of the things that I thought were wrong with it and maybe even other people. And in the last 5 years, I've totally switched my perspective to how can I become the best version of myself, and just focusing on changing myself and creating a reality that I love for me that I can then share with other people in the world around me.
I think this kind of gives us a good insight into who you are, but I want to dive deeper into how you got started with all this. You know, what were the circumstances, a series of events that kind of led to where you are now in writing this book? So go ahead, Jim, and share with us your story of how you got started with what you do.
Sure. So throughout my life, I've had kind of a lot of what you might call cultural markers of success. You know, I was on the football team in high school. I was in student government in college. I was president of my fraternity. I tended to do pretty well in school. I got really good grades, etc. And so in a lot of ways, you could look at me from the outside and say, oh, this person is really successful. And then once I graduated from college, after a little while, I actually got the exact job that I wanted. And then right around that same time, I was able to have a relationship with the woman that I exactly wanted at that same time. And I thought, if I have this awesome job and I'm with this awesome person, that's going to make my life complete. I'm going to be happy and fulfilled and all of that. Well, that isn't what happened. Once I got those things in my life, I remember I was sitting in my living room one day with my girlfriend at the time, who was the person I really wanted to be with. And that moment really scared me because I felt completely alone and I felt miserable. And that was really shocking for me, because it was like I've been working on getting all of these things in my life, and now that I have them, I still don't feel happy and fulfilled. So why is that? And what will make me happy and fulfilled instead? And that's kind of what started this whole journey for me. And then...
Yeah, I'm interested, like, at what point you got the dream job you wanted, and then you got this girl that you really wanted. And at what point did it kind of settle in where you're like, hey, like, what's going on here? Like, this isn't right. You know, when did that settle in, or how long did that take?
That's a great question. I think subconsciously it was building up for a long time. Like you start to feel it in your stomach, I think. Something's not quite right, but you're not really sure. You don't believe it yet. But in that moment when I was sitting there with her in the same room and still feeling lonely, that's when it really kind of clicked for me mentally and consciously, and I became consciously aware of it. And that's what motivated me to go on this journey and change and learn everything I could about what really makes for a successful, happy, fulfilling life.
Yeah. Yeah. And so where did this journey take you? Like, you acknowledged that there was something missing. What did you start to do to really start working on this area of your life?
So I started searching everywhere for answers to these questions. And just like you, books were what really kind of led me the furthest down this path and kind of, I guess you could say, saved my life or made my life. So I started looking at all of these different books that possibly had answers for me and just started poring over them. And one of the first ones that I read said that it takes about 5 years to have the kind of transformation that I wanted to have for myself. And so in that moment, as soon as I read that idea, I gave myself 5 years to just work on myself and having the transformation that I wanted. And so for the past 5 years, I've just been working on that exclusively, except for, of course, my job that I've had at the time. During those 5 years, I read hundreds, maybe even thousands of books, definitely, or hundreds of academic journal articles. I finished my master's degree this year as well. I took a lot of online and live trainings, anything from the typical Tony Robbins kind of stuff to, dating stuff, whatever it is, whatever training I could get my hands on for personal transformation, I probably took it in. And another really great source for that was podcasts like yours. I think I actually heard you on the Art of Charm podcast. I'm not 100% sure about that.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, great. So I started listening to a personal growth podcast every single morning before work instead of watching the news, which is already a huge positive shift in your life if you do that. And then in those 5 years, I learned so much and I got so much further than I even thought was possible for myself that I decided to put all of the things that I've learned into a book so that I could refer back to it and then other people could have a similar transformation without searching so hard and, without paying so much money and putting so much time into it.
So you've kind of condensed what you've learned into Level Up.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is.
Okay. So what were some of your books and live trainings and live events and online programs? What did you kind of learn after doing all of that stuff about these programs? Were you just noting a lot of them were the same? I'm just interested and curious about that.
Sure. It's so funny. You probably can relate to this, but once something really clicks for you consciously, it's kind of that elusive obvious where it should have been obvious to you the whole time. And once you learn it, it's like, oh, that's so obvious. And, 100 different people could say it in a completely different way, but that one person really connects with you and then it clicks and you're like, oh yeah, of course. And that's kind of been my experience now that I've learned all this stuff. It seems so obvious, but there are probably guys out there listening to your podcast right now that want to create something like this too, or maybe like a podcast like yours.
Sure.
And they're like, oh, everything's already been said, which is kind of true in a way. But I mean, I know there are messages that I got hundreds of times that didn't click with me until the 101st time.
Yeah.
And you can always bring your own unique life experiences and perspectives to messages that are coming in. And I think there's a lot of universal themes, but they can be applied and thought about in different ways. And that's what I try to provide, is kind of a different way of looking at some of the most important things that I've learned in my journey.
Yeah. What have you found to be kind of one of the key mindsets to have when you begin this journey?
Good question. So one really big one for me personally is having a foundational sense of self-worth that is not dependent on external validation or what our society defines as success. So basically, most of us, and our culture kind of encourages this, we think when I get that BMW, I will be successful and have value. Or, when I'm with the person I want to be with, then I can validate myself or whatever it is. But in reality, if your self-worth is based on those external markers, you're never going to be fulfilled and satisfied, because your self-worth is completely up to you, and any of those external things can be taken from you. So it's a very kind of risky way to go about getting your value. It's not healthy, and it's not the most beneficial way for you to feel good about yourself. So yes, it's good if you get all A's in school, but that's not why you're valuable. You're valuable just because you exist as a person. And once you have that solid base, that solid foundation of self-worth within yourself for no reason at all, basically, just because you exist, and that actually allows you to take more risks and to actually achieve more and to be more successful, because if you try something and fail, you still think you're awesome anyway.
Yeah. A part of that kind of mindset would begin with self-love and like really loving yourself. I think that would really like amplify that right there.
Absolutely. So my second chapter is self-worth. Chapter 5 is self-love for that very reason. So you start with that foundation of self-worth, and then, self-love is something that you can use to amplify and build that, like you said, for sure.
How has knowing and going through this journey helped you in your personal life and in your professional life? Because it sounded like you had what most people want, is like the dream job, and then like get that crush that they wanted for so long. How has personal development in this journey affected those areas of your life?
That's a really, really good question. So if your goal is to meet the cultural ideal of success, having that sense of self-worth might actually hurt that, because that's not what I want anymore. So if you just want to rise up the ranks in a corporation, you don't necessarily need self-worth. I know a lot of people who make a lot of money who are miserable. And so if that's your goal, you don't necessarily need it. But if your goal is to do something that's meaningful to you and still be able to support yourself, that's where it's really come in for me. As far as, I don't have to succeed in a way that other people think is successful. All I want now is to create things of value for the world, make enough money to support myself, and do something meaningful to me every single day.
Yeah. It's just a different mindset shift, and it's hard to let go of that external values, such as like having like a fast car and having a big house and having the watch and the girl. How could you help a guy kind of like detach himself from external values and really just start judging himself based on his own values?
That's an incredibly good question. So there's a few things that you can do. And I think like anything else, it takes practice, especially in the first, 90 days that you're trying something new like that. You need to have structures in place that allow you to bring your consciousness back to this point, because it's really easy to get caught up in those external things. Even if you're really, Zen or whatever, and you meditate and you are doing things that are meaningful to you, and you're not really as plugged in as everyone else to the culture, it's hard to resist those social pressures. And when you start succeeding, even for yourself, you get a lot of that positive feedback sometimes, and then you have to consciously remove yourself from that. So the first thing I think would be taking some significance away from the good things people say about you. Because if the negative things that people judge you for aren't true, the good things they say about you aren't true either. And you have to maintain your own value for your own reasons. So I think being aware that other people's judgments of you, both positive and negative, don't define who you are, and you define who you are. Just continuing to come back to that, I think, is a big part of it. Dr. Dan Gilbert from Harvard has a really great TED Talk called The Surprising Science of Happiness. And he talks about how people who win the lottery jackpot and people who get in a car accident and lose the use of both of their legs, both of those people return to their normal level of happiness after a few months. And so we all kind of think that the lottery winner would be happier, but over the long term, that's not true. But there are two things that we know for sure will increase your long-term happiness. The first one is practicing gratitude every day. And so I think people have heard that before, but that's one way to give yourself this kind of positive reinforcement in your life, is to show gratitude or express gratitude every single day as a practice. And then the second thing, which is what I'm trying to get back to from your original question, second part of that is going after your desires. So even though you accept yourself completely right now, and even though your self-worth isn't based on any outcomes that you have no control over, you still have to go after the things that you really want. That's part of being happy. It's, human beings are wired to continue to grow. And if you're not growing, your happiness level over time isn't going to be as high. And the key is just to know what your desires are, take action toward them in spite of fear, and then make sure that those desires don't become needs. So it's okay to want something really bad, just don't make it something that you need. Because really all we need is, food, water, shelter, clothing, and maybe a little affection, etc.
Yeah. I think that's a huge lesson, and connect that to like some of the listeners right now.
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is, just because you have a high sense of self-worth and you realize that, getting that watch or getting that job that you want isn't ultimately going to make you more valuable or happier in the long run, that doesn't mean you should stop going after it. If it's something that you really want, you should still go after it. So it's not an all or nothing solution. It's not, that's one of the big myths that exists in the personal growth community, in my opinion, is there's one side of it that kind of focuses on this inward fulfillment, where it's like, accept everything, everything's cool, meditate, be zen, all of that stuff, which is great. That's part of it. That's the gratitude half of it. And then there's this other world where, success is the big marker. And it's like, how can you be more successful? And I think those two areas are kind of the most popular versions of personal growth out there that exist in the commercial.
Right.
Yeah. So people identify with one or another, and then they kind of just go after that area. Well, what I'm saying is that both of those things can work together. And that's how you maximize your happiness in life, is by both accepting what is right now and having a high sense of self-worth that's not based on anything. And then also going after your desires and facing your fears and trying to be as successful as you can in a way that's meaningful to you personally.
Yeah, I feel that same way with the community. It's like some people actually will use personal development to help them become more successful. And that's great. That's an awesome outlook to have. And the other one is to just look inside and be kind of happy with where you are. And like you said, Zen-like. But I feel like that could be almost damaging for that individual if that's all, if they just like lost their goals that they had, like their big audacious goals are just destroyed because they're like, hey, you don't need to do that. You don't need to have that. Just take care of yourself.
Right. And people who are depressed don't want anything. They don't have anything that makes them get out of bed. And so this whole idea of the West kind of represents the success only kind of mindset, and the East kind of represents this acceptance, gratitude mindset. And I think, they're kind of two aspects of that same coin, and, we should value both of them equally.
Yeah, I like that. You talked about like how there's common things that you'll read 100 times over again, and it'll take you 101 or 102 tries to really learn that. But when we're talking about fear, it's like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, we need to overcome our fear in order to get what we want, in order to build the business, in order to quit our job, in order to drop out. Whatever it is, fear is always going to be there. What have you found to be helpful in overcoming fear?
I don't have any more balls than anyone else. I've been terrified throughout this entire process completely.
Yeah.
And so how was I able to act anyway is what you're asking. And I think that's a really good question. So there's a few things. Number one, I've had a lot of support. I was doing personal growth by myself for like 4 years. And last year I finally reached out for a coach, and she's the one who pushed me to go this route instead of going to do a PhD and becoming a college professor, which is like the safe route for me. And without that support, I probably wouldn't have been able to do it on my own, even though I have an ability to act in spite of fear in general in my life. And then the second thing is writing out worst case scenarios and having an actual plan for if that comes true. That's been really helpful for me. I did that when I was thinking about leaving my job. I wrote out the absolute worst case scenario I could think about. And then I came up with a plan that I would use if that actually happened. I think that really helps your mind kind of settle on that. And then the third thing I would say is, kind of like Eleanor Roosevelt says, practice facing your fears on a regular basis. So for example, for me, a few years ago, one of my biggest fears was bungee jumping. And so I went with one of my friends and I just went bungee jumping. And to be totally honest with you, it was actually a worse experience than I imagined. But I'm still glad I did it because it trains that ability to act in spite of your fear just by continuing to do it.
Yeah. I've been asked this question of how did you just quit your job and do all this? It's not that I'm just extremely fearless. It's just that you really just have to have 10 seconds of boldness, 10 seconds of being courageous in order to make an extremely bold move. And that move can alter the course of your life. But it's not every day I'm just constantly doing all this crazy stuff. I just quit my job. And this applies to if you're trying to improve with women, it's you need to meet more women. So for 10 seconds out of your day, you just need to be fearless for 10 seconds and then just go walk over to that girl. Or if it's asking for the sale, it doesn't take, it's just asking for the sale. It's that's scary to do sometimes, but it really just takes 10 seconds of being bold and that's it. And then you can go back to your regular life. That's kind of how I explain it.
That's a really good way to put it. And, it applies to so many things in life. Even, at the poker table, when you go all in, a lot of guys can relate to this. You feel maybe you're bluffing or something and you feel like you're shaking basically. And it's can you act when you feel that way? And that's all it is.
It's just handling that moment for 10 seconds. And it's yeah, this guy's so crazy. But it was really just a 10-second move that you made or a short time frame of you being very bold.
Exactly. And I think just like you, what really kind of drove me in this direction was the idea that regret is so much worse. I don't want to be that 86-year-old who looks back and says, oh man, I wish I would have done that. That scares me way more than all of these little tiny fears that I'm facing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I want to touch on the subject of so I've been here and you obviously you're reading hundreds of books, live programs, live trainings. At what point do you really just stop? At what point do you just put it down and be you know what? I know enough, or I need to start taking action?
That's a good question. So my philosophy is you can never possibly learn enough. So for me, I'm a lifelong learner. I'm going to keep reading for the rest of my life and keep learning. But now it's almost more oh, I have this product I'm developing. What can I learn about it for myself? And then also share it with the people I'm creating it for as well. And so you have a little bit more meaning and purpose behind what you're doing versus just randomly looking around for answers. But there's so much ignorance out there. There's so much awareness that we can gain that I don't think you're ever done. And I think it's more of a process than an outcome. But then I think there's a cycle of taking action and learning, and you have to do both at the same time. So you take an action, you learn from that. Maybe, so let me give you an example. My writing is definitely not perfect. I'm still working on it. I'll still be working on it, the day I die. But I'm taking action. I put out a book, and even though I already did that, I'm still continuing to learn from other writers. I'm reading books on writing. I'm practicing writing every day. And so it's a continual process of both taking action and seeking out additional answers. But I think what you're trying to say is, you can just get lost in that world of learning more and more and more, especially now with the internet, and there's so much content available. Yeah. It's amazing. It's like that paradox of choice, we have so many choices. What do you pick?
Yeah. So many podcasts available. There's so many books out there. There's so many bloggers. There's TED. There's so much good content. There's so many different live events to go to. You could spend a big part of your life just studying personal development.
Yes.
But at some point, it's you got to use what you're learning and apply it into what you want to go out and achieve. And I've said it a number of times on the podcast, but stop listening to the podcast, even though this is my podcast. But I honestly care. And I'm saying if you continue to listen to this podcast every day, and you're listening to other podcasts and you're not taking action, that's not the goal. That's not my mission. I want you to learn, go apply, and get those results and transform your life.
100%. That's one thing that's allowed me to achieve any of the successes I've had in my life is putting what I'm learning into action immediately.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's no good time. There's never going to be the right time. Just start doing it, feel that discomfort. And then between the levels of happiness and success, there's a lot of scary, dark places that you could go to. But what's on the other side is worth it. And there's so much more out there.
Yeah. Yeah. I've kind of come to this common question people sometimes ask me is like, what's your favorite book? Like, what was the best book you've read? Because if people come to my house, I have this wall of books and it looks like I'm crazy. And maybe I am to a certain level, but they say, "Oh, what's the best book out of all of this?" Like they're looking for a shortcut. And what I say is like, "Hey, like it really depends on where you're at in life.
Totally.
Like if you're right now building a blog, like I've got a book for you. Like if right now you're trying to overcome depression, like I've got a book for you. If you're right now you're trying to like develop your leadership skills, then I got a book for you. But I think it really just depends on like where you're at in life, and then that's like the content that you should be consuming, and then just like take action, and then you'll end up running into another stumbling block, and then just go learn that thing, and then just continue the path, but stay on a path.
I think that's great advice. And what's really great is once you figure out, and there's a lot of tools to help you figure out what you're actually passionate about, and you never get there. There's always more layers of the onion that you can unpeel, so to speak. But whatever layer you're on right now, what's so great about living right now, especially if you live, in a developed country, is basically unlimited access to the information that you need.
Yeah.
But it comes back to knowing what you want and then taking action toward it, like you said. So it all kind of works together, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Jim, let's dive into the knowledge round. I'm just going to ask you some rapid fire questions here.
Sure.
All right. Are you ready for the knowledge round?
I'm ready.
Hey, I want to share with you more about the Knowledge for Men 3-day intensive retreat. I will show you how to discover yourself so you'll know exactly who you are, what you want, and have the conviction on how to get there. You can become a leader so you can achieve greatness in all aspects of your life and become the man you want to be. It is all lying within us dormant until the right teacher helps us tap into our inner warrior. You will be tested, challenged, and pushed beyond your limits, and together we will push the boundaries of what is really possible in your life. So go to kfmretreat.com to apply because there are only 10 spots for the retreat, and there are thousands of people listening to this right now. When the 10 spots are gone, they're gone. So go to kfmretreat.com and join me now. This is your time. I'd love to serve you in building and creating a bigger life. Welcome to the Knowledge Round, where the guests will be asked rapid-fire questions to give the audience invaluable pieces of wisdom to help transform their lives. Starting in 3, 2, 1, showtime. In post-production, but first question I have for you is, what was holding you back from becoming the man you are now today?
It's a great question. There are a lot of things. I think culture, society, the expectations of family and friends, what I used to think would make me happy, and kind of all of these, I guess, not being aware of reality at a higher level was the main thing.
Not being aware of reality.
Yeah, like the best example is just, I was on a particular path. The reason I was on that path is because I thought that's what I wanted, and I thought that would make me happy. And in reality, that wasn't what was going to make me happy or fulfilled. And so I had to learn that by experiencing it. And so not knowing that that wouldn't make me happy was what kept me on that path. And then realizing that, that wasn't going to be it for me was what pushed me. That pain pushed me into this truer path for me.
Got it. And can you name a person who's had a tremendous impact on your life, such as a mentor? Who is this person and how have they impacted your life?
I think mentorship is one of the most important things for personal growth, and I've had a lot. The one that just came to mind right now, her name is Dr. Heidi Reeder. She was the advisor for my thesis for my master's degree, and she also published a book last year called Commit to Win. Having her kind of be there as a resource for me while I was developing my thesis project and then also writing my book has been tremendous for me.
Got it. All right. So I even just said, I don't like when people ask me this question, but what are your 3 most influential books and why?
Well, I prepared a list because I thought you would ask. I'm going to go a little bit away from kind of the traditional personal growth books. The first one is The Birth and Death of Meaning by Ernest Becker. The second one is The Selfish Gene by Richard Dawkins.
Mm-hmm.
The third one is A Billion Wicked Thoughts by Ogi Ogus and Sai Gadam. And the last one is The Third Chimpanzee by Jared Diamond.
Those are some good, interesting books. It sounds like you're a lot into, what is this, like looking back and understanding why we do what we do.
Exactly.
Like at like a biological level.
That's a big part of it for sure. And I mean, I'm interested in all levels of human behavior, but I think that's a good base for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's play this scenario here. Imagine you had 60 seconds with your 20-year-old self. What would you tell him to do, and what would you tell him not to do?
I would tell him to do what he really wants to do and stop trying to prove himself.
Prove himself to himself or to others?
Yeah, I mean, like we think we're trying to prove ourselves to everyone else, but really it just comes down to trying to prove yourself to yourself, I think. And that's definitely the way it was for me. But I think it kind of gets reflected both ways.
Got it. And what's one underrated characteristic that you believe every person should work on? And if they did, they'd see massive results.
Integrity.
Yeah.
Living inside your own truth and reality to a certain extent, allowing yourself to be influenced, of course, by positive influences, but ultimately being authentic and maintaining your integrity and having your own standards for life and living by those instead of some kind of external standard for living.
Nice. I like it. And now kind of looking back at where you were, let's say in college and to where you are now, and having gone through this journey of reading and studying and practicing and going to live events and really working on yourself and also writing your book, what would you say is your philosophy on life and success?
That's a really good one.
Yeah, take some time with it.
Yeah, no, I really like that question. It's kind of deep too.
It's super deep.
So my philosophy is life is a paradox. So life is inherently meaningless, meaning that, there's actually no external meaning of life. We create meaning for ourselves and with each other. And so living through paradox is really hard in Western culture, but I think if you can do it, that gets you to a better place. And what I mean by that is just like we've been talking about, you need to be grateful for the things that you already have and also go after the things that you want. You need to have a high sense of self-worth for no reason at all and also continue to strive to be better. You need to take action on your knowledge and continue to gain more knowledge. And so stop focusing on this either or kind of one thing or another mentality and start focusing on all the ways that you can bring and into your life. And I think and is the one word I would use for both your own personal growth and relationships. If I had to go with one word to improve everything, it would be and instead of or.
Can you elaborate on that part, and versus or?
So, for example, there's a trick that improv artists use called yes and. And so when you have two kind of reality frames interacting with each other, or just like people, I guess you could say, however you want to look at it, when you're talking to someone else, you both have a perspective and a reality frame that you're coming from. And typically we kind of push against each other. Well, in improv, what they do is when someone says something that you disagree with, instead of just disqualifying it immediately and just getting rid of that frame, instead you work with it and you say, you agree with whatever that thing is, and then you add to it or build onto it. And I think that's a really good way to build life, I think that's a really good way to live life, where, there's so many things out there that you can't control, but you can work with it. You can reframe it. You can kind of dance with it a little bit. And I think that's the healthiest way to live life, like have a strong internal reality for yourself and then work with the reality around you and the other people around you as well. And kind of have that balance of, your reality and working with the realities around you at the same time.
Yeah. I like what you said in the beginning of this question where basically there is no meaning to life, which is kind of like, what? No way. There is no meaning to life. It's kind of like you bring meaning to life. It's like, what do you want to do? And you, it's up to you to kind of make that meaning for yourself. And it's very true. And it's something that I've said, and I feel that it's kind of liberating to think about that. Like, you are the meaning to life. Like, you create what you want.
Right. Yeah, it's terrifying and liberating at the same time. There's a reason these giant structures exist. They provide some level of, perceived security for us. But really, at the end of the day, you create meaning for yourself, even if you're getting it from some kind of external source.
All right. That's going to conclude the knowledge on there. This has been good. So now let's kind of just talk about like what's going on today. Like what are you looking forward to?
In my personal life, business?
Just what's exciting you. Let's put it that way. Anything.
Yeah, what's really exciting to me now is now that my book has kind of launched, I'm also working on some more online training programs. And then I don't know about you, but I love international travel. And so, I'm excited to explore more of the world. So that's what I really want. I want to teach people things that I think are meaningful and travel around and explore the world. And so that's what I'm most excited about right now, for sure.
Great. Well, this has been good. And so for the listeners, you guys can check out Level Up on Amazon. It's Jim Wolfe. Just you Google the name, you can Google Level Up, and it'll show up. Or you can check out his website at James D. Wolfe. There's an E at the end of wolf.com. And it's been good. James, I'm honored that you came here on the show and shared your story, and we're vulnerable on the show. And I found this to be really impactful.
Andrew, I really love what you're doing, and I was really happy to be on the show today.
Thank you for listening to the Knowledge for Men podcast. Hundreds of interviews and 1 million downloads later, we're continuing to build an international movement, and we've just started. So if you enjoyed this episode, go ahead and leave a review in iTunes. It really helps to grow the podcast. Guys, 2015 is the official year of living with purpose, where every day you do only the things that matter to you. You wake up, live with purpose, and take massive action towards the life you want. Check out kfmfree.com to get free tools I've created to help you crush life. Again, that's kfmfree.com. This is your host, Andrew Farabee, and I'll see you in the next episode.